Not to be dramatic, but I think this is going to be one of the most important videos I will ever make on this channel.
No pressure. Okay.
It drives me a little bit crazy every time I read an assumption in a comment section or somewhere, just assuming they
smelt bad. Oh, it would have been really terrible. Oh, I couldn't have stood to live back then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I like can't wrap my head around this concept that people just didn't bathe and everyone walked around smelling horrendous.
It is a myth that needs busting, and we see it everywhere.
I'm very excited today to bring you Hilary Davidson, dress historian. Dress historian? Yeah, I don't know what I should have.
Curator,
archaeologist, curator, dress historian, actual intelligent human being on this subject of knowledge.
Who washes.
Who does wash. Me, on the other hand.
You know, one of the most fundamental things about dress history is bodies. We have bodies, we dress bodies, we deal with bodies. It, has grease and sweat and oil and needs cleaning and attending. So I've been fascinated by this sort of for as long as I've been fascinated by clothes. And when we look at them in museums or, in collections, it's often those traces of the bodies that really give us a sense of how they were used. The grease paint on theatrical clothing, the sweat stains under the arms. We're going to be talking a lot about sweat stains. It's all of these kind of traces and bodily traces, they tell us about the history of clothing. It's fascinating.
If you clicked on this video in hopes of gaining some grooming tips for your grand scheme of running off to the countryside, frolicking through wheat fields and raising sheep like the medieval farmer you were destined to be, allow me to fuel that fantasy further with the sponsor of today's video, Heyday. Holidays can be a stressful time in general, with gift wrapping and shopping and holiday parties and all the things you holiday people do. But for me and my team especially, it means the great chaos of the annual costume review. So it's been really lovely to be able to just unwind at the end of a long day of spreadsheets and scheduling and emails with a bit of peaceful farming. Heyday is a free-to-download mobile game that allows you to cultivate your own idyllic little farm by planting crops, raising animals, baking bread, and trading resources with your neighbors. It's a truly relaxing way to spend a bit of downtime. Download Heyday through the link below to get 15,000 gold coins and a snow royalty decoration for your very own farm. Thank you to Heyday for sponsoring this video and for funding the research for today's topic.
People hear the word bath and hear people didn't have baths, which is strictly true. But let's break that down as to why. I'm sort of talking about the general, let's say, European cold climate where this often comes up a lot in discussion with mainstream Western fashion. The sheer getting of water to make a bath is a huge amount of fuel, of labor, of water, of time. You're taking the time on the stoves that then could be used to make food. It's tricky. Because I haven't had to either myself or get the servants to take a large volume of water and apply heat to that water until its temperature is raised enough to take it to a receptacle that water can be put in, that I can then take my clothes off and get into that receptacle of hot water and probably do that again and again and again in order to have a bath.
It's not as simple as just walking into the bathroom and turning on the shower.
Exactly.
Taking a bath, it is a huge time commitment, especially in the past, except for a very select group of people. That's valuable labor hours that you either need to take care of your household, take care of your farm.
Obviously there's bathing cultures and histories all around the world, but if you look at them a lot, what they're doing as well is continuously heating a large volume of water. So like Japanese baths, it's a communal, these are communal things because the water is there and the water is heated and you go to the water does not come to you. That's one way around the problem of getting water heated. The ability to just turn on a tap and have a thing filled with hot water or it come down upon you. This is miraculous. It's fantastic. It's one of my favorite things about civilization. The fact that we can go into our bathrooms and take our clothes off and be fully naked and comfortable, that's huge. That's just a huge cultural leap. To do that in the past relied on a whole lot of conditions we take for granted now, but were really hard then.
I spent a winter in New York without heat. Even just getting into my pajamas was I had to psych myself up to be okay, And then I just like count to 30 and be like, okay, by the end of this countdown, like I'm gonna be dressed. It was horrific to do that voluntarily. And then get even colder when you get yourself wet. Like, no.
There's this sort of this weird idea that people in the past somehow, I don't know, are like dumber than we are. It's a very strange attitude. Frankly, if I had to take all my clothes off in an unheated room with badly heated water in a small tin tub, maybe not in front of the fire, I wouldn't be bathing either. So this is why people don't take a bath. But that doesn't mean that people don't wash. I'm really interested in how quickly we've lost the notion of washing stands, and we've lost the cultural memory of washing stands. If you read an Agatha Christie book or look at a good period film, they often have in the bedroom, you have a basin and a jug, and that will be filled with water, and you pour it in, and that's your water for just like washing it. You wake up in the morning, you wash your face, and you could take a sponge bath, you could take a flannel bath, and it's really easy. It's really effective. Again, I was doing this in Eastern Europe. I'd have like one little bowl of sudsy water and one little bowl of warm rinsing water, and it's perfectly easy to wash your whole body like that. People could wash every day. They're just not immersing their naked body fully in water. So once we've got that kind of distinction between bathing and washing in place, that starts to kind of open up a whole new world of possibility, because we are now like linked into the only showers get you clean bodily approach. But people washed every day and quite effectively, and we would be saving bazillions of litres of water if we did that too. I mean, I do recommend it, but I also get into the shower every day being very grateful.
Another assumption that I feel like we make nowadays is that it is only possible, it's solely possible to clean yourself with water.
And, vast quantities of some sort of detergent.
Right, yeah. Right.
But there's also fabric, body linens, and the layer that goes between you and your outer clothing. And this is why it's so frustrating to see things on screen, that old, corsets with no chemise underneath. Because all I do is look at that and go, one, your corset is rubbing, but two, your corset is pulling in all of the oils and sweat from your body. And when you look at the history of dress, what you see is this consistent, you put something washable between yourself and your outer clothing. And the ideal is that no part of your actual body will hit your outer clothing. And this is where linen shifts, smocks, shirts, later cotton ones, this is what they do. Linen is just the most fabulous, wonder fabric. And it absorbs sweat, it absorbs oils, and then you take it off and you wash it. And you're kind of taking off all of that layer with you as well.
Yeah, it makes so much sense too, because linen, it's a plant fiber. These plant fibers are meant to absorb moisture because that's what they do as plants. I mean, so does cotton too, but I guess linen does it more effectively.
It does it far more effectively. It's the stem of a plant rather than the bulb of a plant. Right. I love the findings that come through from reenactors and living history people as well. And one of the most interesting findings in terms of bodily cleanliness and health that I've come across is Ruth Goodman, who tried to see which kept her cleaner, washing her body but not changing her linens, or wearing clean linen every day and not washing. And it was the latter that worked. There's also a slight exfoliating effect because linen has, a bit of texture. So having that against your body every day, it's kind of like getting like a full body exfoliation. And she discovered that even without, washing the majority of the skin, putting clean linens on every day had a cleansing effect. People are sensible. People are, we're ingenious monkeys. And we do things that make sense for how we live. I love unpacking these internal logics of why people wear clothes, and linens and body linens are a huge part of that. In any period of history, we always think we're normal.
Yeah.
And that whatever we do is kind of pretty much self-evident. This is the way you live.
Yeah.
And, lots of human cultures and human misunderstandings are based on differences of opinion about what is normal and what is the right way to live. People in the past are just different. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. I mean, some things they're very wrong about, but it doesn't mean everything was wrong. So it's that kind of trying to break out of our own time and place. It's really hard.
Yeah, and not impose our own modern judgments on the past.
Oh, yes.
That's a huge thing that we do a lot. A lot of the assumptions we make about the past are rooted in the realities of the present.
Absolutely.
So a lot of our fabrics today are synthetic, and those don't absorb moisture. In fact, they promote moisture without absorbing it because it's plastic fibers. It causes you to sweat. That sweat is not absorbed, so it just sits there and it smells. And we think like, oh, you can't possibly clean yourself with your clothes because, I wear my clothes for a day and I need a shower. But that's because we're not wearing the same fibers as we were wearing historically. They're not made the same way. We're not living the same way. We have modern conveniences that allow us to operate completely differently. And it's so easy to look at the practices of someone in the past saying, oh, they weren't bathing, and just be horrified. Oh my God, they must have smelled so bad.
They weren't bathing like me, therefore.
Right.
And I think also we are now keyed into the feeling of clean. And I feel like shower clean has become our normal.
Yeah.
And so when we conceive of anything different from shower clean, it's dirty.
Yeah. I also think about sometimes the psychological power of scent, and how a lot of our bath products are scented. We've got our soaps, our shampoos, our, body washes and whatever. And we tend to use the same products. And so we smell the same products and we associate that scent with clean. So there's like a psychological factor of like embodying or experiencing cleanliness.
Especially in America where they are, sorry guys, addicted to dryers. I am Australian, and where we can, which is most of the time, you dry your washing outside on a clothesline. The Hills hoist is an icon of Australian design, and they smell different. And there is actually a reaction that happens when you expose clothes to sunlight. It does bleach them a bit, it disinfects, and it gives this incredible smell of actual clean clothes. And I wonder how much of this kind of clean laundry smell is also slightly nostalgic, because so many people live in apartments, don't have an outside space, can't hang their laundry outside. But there is actually, if you dry it outside, fabulous smell of sun and wind. So much of our perceptions of the past are filtered through and completely skewed by the 19th century. Particularly the late 19th century. I think of it as like the Victorian filter.
Yes.
And what we also get in the Victorian filter is this whole moral hygiene. Cleanliness is next to godliness. The notion of clean shows the state of your soul, the state of your morals, this kind of performative clean. And we are very, very much still within that mode of we must not only be clean, we must be seen to be clean. And I mean, the thing is as well, when you start looking at household receipt books, or even earlier, like, Renaissance apothecary, there's so much about scenting linens and scenting, how to make this smell good and that smell good. And you put this in with your linens, you put lavender in here, and, here is a washing water. They also had these beautiful, like, perfuming things, but they weren't necessarily about clean. They were just about putting good smells in the air around you to sort of miasmically protect you from other things in the air. There's all sorts of theories in there.
So I love that you bring up this miasma theory of, especially in the medieval and Renaissance periods, the idea that before we understood that bacteria is what causes illness, this idea that scent, smell, odor is the thing that gets into your nostrils and infects you and causes illness. The contradiction between that and everyone smelled horrible all the time and just entire towns were just stinking, when the general medical philosophy back then was you don't want these odors because they can kill you. Like, this is an indication of the literal plague. A
lot of the covering up of the body was about that as well. So again, when you see shirts that go up to the neck and down to the wrist, that is also that protectiveness of putting a bubble of good smells around you is, as you say, completely contradictory to this, like, the stinking medieval peasant. I think, like, the $1 million question here, the one that people really want to know about, is body odor and armpit sweat.
Yes.
And, like, did people in the past have stinky pits?
Yeah.
Really, that's what people want to know and what people assume. And there are all of these, like, face washes and hair powders and all sorts of things, but there's no deodorant. There's no like, apply this powder to your armpits, or it might be scent. So the text that I found is translations from French manuals in the 1820s. And in it, they actually talk about perspiration. And you should have heard my joy when I came across this. The concern that this writer had about armpit sweat was the sweat. And again, this completely, it shifted my thinking. And this is, I've been thinking about this stuff for 20 years. And it's still, I'd never quite made that conceptual leap that it's not the smell, it's the sweat that's a problem. The writer goes into a lot of detail about the problems of having damp cloth next to your body. When you sweat from the armpit, it goes into your body linens, and what you want to do is to kind of get that dry as soon as possible. Chemises and shifts and things get smaller in the 19th century, but even with the short sleeves, they're not little cap sleeves here, like I saw on the poster for the Napoleon film the other day. There's we're seeing armpit, but they are always covering that armpit area. Yeah. And the writer does talk about kind of essentially dress shields, adding extra bits in there to absorb the sweat. And since a lot of what causes body odor is the oxidization of the sweat, if you can get the sweat from the body and remove the sweat receptacle, then the body odor problem goes away as well.
Right.
And I think that's an important part of the engineering of clothing to reduce smell. Basically, we're talking about, comfortable people. But if we look at the poor, workhouses, things like that, there's, records of people coming into a workhouse in their shirt and they stay in it for 3 months. That is going to smell. Some parts of the past did smell, but that's not necessarily because it was people's choices and they were idiots who I didn't know how to wash myself. Right. It was kind of conditions of material poverty. We still have that in many ways today with homeless people, because they do not have access to the facilities to clean themselves. They don't have access to multiple kinds of clothing. They have to use their clothing as their permanent shelter. And so that is kind of noticed in a way that marks out what their lack, the ways that they are not able to participate in all of these social conventions that we're talking about. And so that happens in the past as well. This is why clean linen becomes a status thing, because if you can change your linen once a day, great. If you can change your linen 3 times a day, as some people in the past did, greater. You are showing that you can afford the laundry, that you can afford the number of shirts, that you have the leisure to change that many times a day. So I think then where you do find people smelling in the past and records of it, it's generally either after exertion or it is as a marker of material lack.
All of which are factors that still exist today.
We are interested in the technical properties of layers now. We just do it in a different way, and we do kind of tech it. Things like sports performance wear. Do your gym leggings, do they have active wicking properties? And all of these things that kind of have to be designed into synthetic fibers that especially linen and wool have as inherent natural properties. Yeah. So in a sense, we are still concerned with what a shirt does, but now we just call it high performance base layer.
Just engineering backwards, I guess. And
again, we think it's kind of futurism, but what it is trying to get back to a point of the functionality of clothing that we used to have, and then we progressed our way out of.
I feel in a way, a lot of things that worked in the past and things that worked really well were sort of over hastily abandoned in favor of technology and progress, and especially once we get into industrialization territory. Yes. It's there's this shiny new industrialization thing, let's do this instead.
More and more I'm convinced that solutions for the future are found in the past when it comes to dress.
Fully. That is my whole life philosophy.
Exactly.
And then we have to rediscover it, we have to reinvent it, we have to engineer ourselves backwards to get to the point that history was already at, whilst assuming our modern society is in ways superior to the
Exactly.
point where we sort of underestimate the past.
We completely underestimate the past, and you see this all the time. The pyramids weren't built by aliens. You can do amazing things with material when that's what you think through the world with.
And we're so used to just wearing our outer clothes against our bare skin now that it's like, oh my God, how are they not washing their dresses? How are they not bathing every single day?
We can chuck everything in the washing machine. So it changes, we can wear a t-shirt against our skin because it's really easy to just wash there as well.
We're also not as precious about our clothes now because it's it cost us £10 on the high street that you just go buy this thing and I'll need a new one next year anyway. So, to wear a shirt once and throw it in the wash and then wear it again and throw it in the wash again and, just go on like that, it's going to be detrimental to the clothes.
We also have more clothes.
Yeah.
We don't have maybe, 3 good day dresses that we have to rotate and keep through and work out on our budget. And textiles are less valuable, so we treat them worse.
But especially in the days when we're hand weaving fabrics, when we're making gowns out of silk and, things that really should not be washed because it changes the texture of the cloth.
Or you can't wash it because of, the interlayers and the construction and the boning. These are not things that are made to be washed.
We've got all these 18th century 300, 400-year-old dresses that survive to us today that are in, not perfect condition, but good enough condition. They haven't been broken down by the organic material of being secreted by the body. We have effectively none of the undergarments that survive, the skin layers that survive. Makes sense that they would break down more, they would degrade more, but a lot of the outer garments survive because they were protected from these oils of the body. Like, logically, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Our condition of immediate life becomes like a failure of imagination.
Yeah.
To go, what if? If these conditions change, how does this change? Like, we're happy to do it for maybe like science fiction, right? If you change these parameters, how does the world expand? But we're maybe less willing to do that in the past that happened and go, when you take away these things, when you take away hot running water, what do? Rather than just blankly going, it's different, I don't understand it, everyone must have smelled. And kind of think about, well, how would I deal with it in the past with the tools that are available to me? We forget that people are animals. And when you think about, the smell of dogs, which some people love, some people don't love, the way you nuzzle your nose into your cat's belly because it just smells like really good, cat fur. It's so nice.
I love the smell of guinea pigs.
Exactly. Humans smell. And I've seen some things as well that kind of talk about that as a comfort, actually. To go into a house and smell human, especially if that's your family, is like, this is my nest, this is my burrow, on a very kind of primitive atavistic level, that maybe humans smell like humans, and we forget that it's okay for humans to smell like humans, and that's part of our social bonding, and that's part of our mammalness. It's like, babies, they know what their mother's smell is like, and that's like a really soothing thing. They know the smell of their mother's skin, that the way, you smell like a lover's piece of clothing they've left because it smells like them. There's that really personal dimension, our humanness, that I think maybe we lose in an obsession with cleanliness. It's okay that we smell like us.
We just social constructed our way into the smell of humans as a negative thing.
Exactly. And I think that's when we pull ourselves back from we have to be clean and think about what human scents do in our life and contribute to our life. I think it's much more nuanced in the way we experience it, perhaps, and let's just extend that back to the past.
So the too long didn't watch, which I hope is not the case. You are already at the end of this video. If you skip to the end.
It's nice to meet you.
So what have we learned today?
People washed. They kept themselves clean. They did their best to keep their clothing clean. And this kind of idea that everyone in the past stank and they weren't concerned about this, like we'd be concerned about it now, it's a myth. And a lot of it comes from just assumptions in our modern day, projected backwards and not thinking about the people in the past as people, like we're people. But they washed. This is the takeaway.
You can find more of Hilary on Instagram. We will have your Instagram in the link.
Great.
As well as if you want to read more of Hilary's work. Hilary, okay, this is kind of unrelated to the topic at hand, but I know there are a ton of you like Jane Austen folk out there. Regency folk. Oh my god, there's so many of you Regency folk out there. Hilary has written some fantastic work on Regency dress. So you should go forth and read.
This is the latest book. It came out in September, available wherever you like to buy books. And then my first book is Dress in the Age of Jane Austen, which looks at Regency dress for men and women across the world, and this one focuses on what we can know Jane Austen wore.
Links in the description. Go forth and find that.
Thank you so much. Keep saying linen because...
Minerva. Oh, Lyra? Ma'am. Lyra. No. Lyra, no. She's joining us.
Yay! Squirt your head.
Do you want
Yeah, I do.
some moral support?
Yeah. I've just got like a little guinea pig. This little guinea pig teeth against my finger. It's quite sweet. Guinea pig smell. Oh. So nice.
You do smell nice.